Putin is very emphatic that his forces have the initiative. But the fact is that after now almost 2 years of constant offensive, the results are very meagre. They have taken some Ukrainian towns and cities, battered in the process, but not that much, and have lost enormous numbers in response.
Donald Trump has once again left the world on tenterhooks because he's agreed to another meeting with President Putin in a week or two, claiming that they will discuss peace. Ukraine, meanwhile, wanted to get something out of President Zelensky's trip to Washington, which was the promise that they would be supplied with Tomahawk missiles and M1 tanks, but they didn't get it. So where is the conflict in Ukraine heading? Let's speak to Sir Lawrence Freedman, the Emeritus Professor of War Studies at King's College London. Hello to you.
Hi.
How significant is it, you think, that, there was such a build-up, Ukraine wanting Tomahawk missiles so it could strike well into Russian territory and, clearly not getting them from Donald Trump?
I think it's a little bit of a red herring without wishing to downplay it totally. Tomahawks would take time to arrive. It's not clear how many they would have got. They need to be trained on them and so on and so forth. And frankly, Ukraine has already got means of attacking deep into Russian territory and has been doing so reasonably effectively recently. And Trump had always been a bit iffy on this. I think as significant was the fact that the decision not to send, at least for the moment, came after a phone call with Putin, which created a sort of very different spectacle of, once again, Putin coming in at an opportune moment for him and diverting Trump away with the possibility of yet another summit, this time in Hungary in a couple of weeks' time.
What is your assessment of the state of the conflict? Is one side winning?
I think it's very difficult to say one side is winning. I mean, the general line is that Russia keeps on advancing. Putin is very emphatic that his forces have the initiative. But the fact is that after now almost 2 years of constant offensive, the results are very meagre. They have taken some Ukrainian towns and cities, battered in the process, but not that much, and have lost enormous numbers in response. As difficult, and probably more so for Ukraine, is they attack Ukraine's critical infrastructure, so that creates problems for the winter. Meanwhile, the Russian economy is in trouble, and not necessarily catastrophic, but in trouble, and they've got problems with their oil refineries. So I don't think either side is winning, and also, winning doesn't just mean who's hurting the other more or who's taking more territory. It means who's closest to reaching their political objectives, and the key thing is that Putin is as far away from his political objectives now as he was in February 22.
I mean, does that mean that there is a will on either side to do what Donald Trump wants and to talk peace?
Well, I think they both say they're happy to talk peace. The interesting question is whether there can be a ceasefire. And amidst all how clever Putin was talk after his phone call, what was perhaps surprising was that after the Anchorage meeting, Trump had said, well, I'm not sure about a ceasefire. Maybe you've got to go straight to a political settlement before a ceasefire, which is exactly Putin's position. This time, he went back to saying there has to be a ceasefire. Zelensky has agreed to that. And from what we know, and we don't know a lot of what Putin said to Trump, there's no indication Putin's moved away from his position. He doesn't want the war to stop with a ceasefire now, because that would mean he hadn't achieved his political objectives. He wants Ukraine to hand over more territory because his forces haven't been able to take it militarily.
Now, in the Middle East, we did finally get the 20-point plan. In your view, does Donald Trump have such clear thinking as to what he would like to come out of a Russia-Ukraine deal?
I think it's very different from Gaza. First, the plan was developed really without Hamas or Israel. But Israel had a bit of input in the end. Um, and it's based on strong connections with other players, and in particular Qatar, UAE, Saudis, Egypt, and Turkey, and so on. Um, there isn't a plan. Trump doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a 20-point plan. He has a 1-point plan. Have a ceasefire. That's what he said the other night, and that would leave lots and lots of questions still to be resolved. I don't think myself there's much of an alternative. If you want to see an end to the fighting, that's probably how you start. But even a ceasefire would be extraordinarily difficult at the moment because one thing that's happened in Ukraine is the front lines have become incredibly blurred and chaotic because there's not many people on the front lines because it's too dangerous to spend time there because of drones. So it's a very grey area. And then you have to consider how you would disengage forces and so on. So I don't think it's even that's a simple question. So and before we even get to that point, there's supposed to be a meeting or a conversation between Sergei Lavrov, and Marco Rubio, the two foreign ministers. And to me, the question is whether after that meeting they can say whether it's worthwhile a summit taking place. Because if they can't show some real possibility of progress, do they really want another Alaska, which is all hyped up, and then nothing was agreed there?
Just one final question from a listener, David. He's saying the UK has cruise missiles. Couldn't the UK supply those instead of the Tomahawks?
They couldn't do it without American permission. I mean, you're not allowed to anybody if you've got one country's weapons to sell them on. The UK has sent Storm Shadow, not quite as long range, but reasonably effective missile developed with the French. So we provided quite a lot. I think Tomahawk would have been nice to have for the Ukrainians. I don't think it's a sort of silver bullet in the.
Okay, we will leave it there. Sir Lawrence Freedman, thank you very much indeed.
I met with President Zelensky, as you know, today, and we had a very good meeting, very cordial meeting. In my opinion, they should stop the war immediately. You go by the battle line wherever it is, otherwise it's too complicated. You'll never be able to figure it out. You stop at the battle line, and both sides should go home, go to their families, stop the killing, and that should be it. Stop right now at the battle line. I told that to President Zelensky. I told it to President Putin. Thank you very much, everybody.